I don't know how you people managed to sneak into first class, but this ends now. Flight attendant Vanessa Rodriguez sneered at the two black teenagers in seats 2A and 2B. She rolled her eyes dramatically for other passengers to see. These seats are for paying passengers only, not charity cases. 16-year-old Olivia Johnson looked up from her quantum physics textbook, momentarily confused. Her twin sister Amara paused mid-sip of her orange juice. Around them, other first-class passengers turned to watch the unfolding scene in the morning light of Pinnacle Airlines Flight 783 from Atlanta to Chicago. Vanessa's eyes swept over their designer luggage with obvious disdain. She pointed toward the back of the plane with an exaggerated gesture that made nearby passengers uncomfortable. "I don't know how you girls ended up here, but coach is that way." The twins exchanged glances. Olivia quietly reached for her boarding pass. Amara's hand moved toward her phone. Neither girl could have predicted that this moment would shut down an entire airline within hours. The cabin of the Boeing 737 gleamed in the 8:45 a.m. sunlight streaming through the windows. Business travelers in crisp suits settled into their premium seats, some already working on laptops, others enjoying pre-flight beverages. First class was nearly full, a mixture of corporate executives, a retired judge, and a diversity consultant heading to a conference in Chicago. Olivia and Amara Johnson sat side by side, a study in contrasts, despite being identical twins. Olivia wore her hair in neat braids, her posture perfect as she read advanced physics equations. Her NASA internship finalist pin gleamed on her tailored blazer. Amara, with her natural curls framing her face, had been scrolling through her tech development project before being interrupted. Her custom-designed sneakers peeked out beneath her designer jeans. Behind the galley curtain, junior flight attendant Sophia Martinez watched the scene with growing unease. At 26, she was still relatively new to Pinnacle Airlines, hired just 18 months ago. She'd noticed the pattern of extra verification certain passengers received, but had been warned by senior staff to follow established protocols when she questioned it during training. Vanessa Rodriguez stood over the twins, arms crossed over her Pinnacle Airlines uniform. Her stance was wide, performative, designed to draw attention. "Let me see your boarding passes," she demanded, voice raised unnecessarily. Olivia Johnson held up her boarding pass with steady hands. The first-class designation was clearly printed in bold letters. "Ma'am, here's my ticket. Seat 2A. Vanessa snatched the boarding pass, examining it like a detective studying evidence, her lips pursed in disbelief. "This has to be fake. There's no way you girls can afford first class." She waved the ticket dismissively. "Probably printed this at home." Amara pulled out her phone and started recording. "Excuse me, what's your name? I want to make sure I get this right for the video." "Put that away," Vanessa snapped, her voice rising. "No filming on my aircraft." But Amara kept recording. Her TikTok live stream was already active. The viewer count climbing slowly. 12, 23, 41 viewers watching in real time. A passenger in seat 3B, an older white businessman named Richard Taylor, glanced up from his newspaper with a frown. "Is there a problem here? Some of us are trying to relax before takeoff." The woman across the aisle, well-dressed in her 60s, narrowed her eyes at the scene. "Young ladies usually sit in economy," she murmured to her seatmate, just loud enough for others to hear. "Our father purchased these tickets 3 weeks ago," Olivia explained calmly. "You can verify them in your system." "I don't need to verify anything," Vanessa replied. "I can see there's been a mistake." Inside, Olivia's heart pounded. This wasn't the first time they'd faced assumptions based on their appearance, but it was certainly the most public. She took a deep breath, remembering her father's lessons about maintaining composure. The twins' composure was remarkable given the circumstances. Just 2 hours earlier at their Atlanta home, their father had given them specific instructions. "Remember what we've discussed," Elijah Johnson had said as he helped load their luggage into the car. "People will make assumptions. Stay calm. Document everything and call me if there's any trouble." Elijah Johnson wasn't just any concerned father. As the CEO of Johnson Aviation Technologies, he oversaw a company that provided maintenance services to nearly every major airline in North America. His daughters had grown up understanding both privilege and prejudice, how one could be instantly erased by the other in certain situations. "We'll be fine, Dad," Olivia had assured him, tucking her physics competition certificate into her carry-on. She'd just placed second nationally, earning her spot as a NASA internship finalist. "I've got the new live stream app ready just in case," Amara had added, patting her phone. Her custom social platform had already gained attention from tech investors. Their father had hugged them both. "I'm a phone call away if anything happens." That phone call was now looking increasingly likely. Back on the aircraft, Vanessa pressed her call button. "Janet, I need you in first class immediately. We have a situation." Gate Supervisor Karen Walsh appeared within minutes, her expression already annoyed before she assessed the scene. She was a woman in her 50s who'd worked for Pinnacle Airlines for over 2 decades, her blonde hair cut in a severe bob, her uniform pressed to perfection. Karen had once dreamed of moving into corporate headquarters, but 20 years of passed-over promotions had hardened her. She'd learned to survive by being stricter than necessary by identifying problems before they arose. It had kept her employed through 3 airline mergers and countless layoffs. What's the problem here? Karen's tone suggested she'd already made assumptions. "These girls are sitting in first class with suspicious tickets," Vanessa explained. "I think they're forged." Karen didn't ask to see the boarding passes. She didn't check the reservation system on her tablet. Instead, she looked at the twins and made her decision. "Girls, you need to move to your actual seats. We're holding up our departure." "Ma'am, we have the correct seats," Amara said, her phone still recording. The live stream viewer count now showed 86 people watching, with occasional drops as the cabin's Wi-Fi fluctuated. "You can check your system." Karen Walsh crossed her arms. "We've already checked. Now please gather your things and move to coach. We have paying customers waiting to board." "We are paying customers," Olivia insisted, pulling out her phone. "I can show you the receipt." "I don't need to see your receipt," Karen said dismissively. "Flight attendant Rodriguez has already determined there's an issue with your tickets." In seat 1A, Laura Hernandez shifted uncomfortably. The retired federal judge had been observing the interaction carefully. She noticed the twins' composed responses, their designer luggage and the Johnson Aviation Technologies luggage tags partially visible on their carry-ons. Something wasn't adding up. Hernandez had spent 30 years on the bench, 15 of those in federal court. She'd presided over numerous discrimination cases and recognized the pattern unfolding before her. As a Hispanic woman who had faced her own barriers, she felt a responsibility to observe carefully. Thomas Wilson, the diversity consultant in seat 4C, was now recording discreetly on his phone. With 20 years of experience documenting corporate bias incidents, he recognized what was happening immediately. Wilson had built his consulting firm from nothing after experiencing workplace discrimination himself. Now, major corporations paid him 6 figures to help prevent exactly the kind of situation unfolding in front of him. "I already called airport security," Vanessa announced with satisfaction. "They should be here any moment." Behind them, Sophia Martinez bit her lip, knowing the proper procedure was being ignored. Company policy required verification of disputed tickets through the electronic system before escalation. She'd seen the training videos. But challenging Vanessa or Karen could jeopardize her job, a job that helped support her mother and younger siblings. Still, something in the twins' dignified responses made her increasingly uncomfortable with her silence. True to her word, Officer Michael Sullivan appeared at the aircraft door. He was a tall man with weathered features who seemed eager to resolve the situation quickly. "What's going on here?" he asked, but his eyes were already fixed on the twins. Sullivan was nearing the end of a double shift. He'd handled 3 security incidents already that morning, and his patience was wearing thin. Airport security officers were trained to defer to airline staff on seating disputes. It simplified matters and got planes moving faster. Trespassing. Karen said curtly. They refused to move to their assigned seats. Olivia's voice remained calm. Sir, would you like to see our boarding passes or check your computer system? Officer Sullivan barely glanced at her. Ma'am, please step aside and let me handle this. He didn't ask for identification. He didn't verify the tickets. He simply moved toward the twins with purpose. As Olivia reached for her purse to retrieve more documentation, several items scattered onto her tray table. A platinum American Express card caught the light. Business cards reading Johnson Aviation Technologies slipped between the seat cushions. Her Hermes bag bore the monogrammed initials OJ in gold lettering. None of the airline staff noticed these details. They were too focused on their assumptions. Amara's live stream viewer count continued climbing gradually. 124, 156, 212 viewers. The Wi-Fi connection buffered, occasionally causing momentary drops in the feed. Comments started flooding in. This is disgusting. Flying while black. Someone needs to help these girls at Pinnacle Airlines. Are you seeing this? A middle-aged businessman in seat 5B leaned toward his colleague. This is holding up the whole flight. They should just move and sort it out later. His colleague nodded in agreement. Captain James Reynolds announced over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a minor delay due to a security matter. We expect to resolve this within 10 minutes. In the cockpit, Reynolds checked his watch anxiously. This delay would affect their takeoff slot, potentially causing them to miss their arrival window in Chicago. Cascade delays were a pilot's nightmare, and Reynolds was already on notice for schedule adherence issues after weather problems last month had affected his on-time rating. What's happening back there? He asked the first officer. Seating dispute in first class. Walsh and Rodriguez are handling it. Reynolds sighed. He'd worked with both women for years and knew their reputation for being overzealous with certain passengers. 10 minutes. That's all the time Pinnacle Airlines had left before everything changed. In first class, tensions continued escalating. Olivia's phone buzzed insistently. The caller ID showed Dad, but she declined the call. She declined it again when it immediately rang back. Is someone trying to reach you? Officer Sullivan noticed the persistent ringing. Just my father, Olivia said quietly. He worries when we travel. Well, he's going to have more to worry about soon, Vanessa muttered under her breath loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Inside, Olivia felt a flutter of anxiety. Would Dad think they hadn't handled this properly? Would their classmates see this live stream? The thought of returning to school after a viral video made her stomach tighten, but her face remained composed. She and Amara had been taught that emotional control was a form of power. Meanwhile, passenger Sarah Martinez in seat 3C started recording on her iPhone. She posted to her Instagram story with 4,000 followers, watching racism happen in real time on Pinnacle Airlines Flight 7A3. This is disgusting. Another passenger businessman, Thomas Wilson, in seat 4A, was typing rapidly on his tablet. He managed a diversity consulting firm and recognized discrimination when he saw it. His LinkedIn post would later be viewed by 50,000 people. These girls are being profiled, Thomas said loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. I've seen this happen too many times. Maybe they should just follow instructions, countered Richard Taylor from 3B. The crew has a job to do. Their job includes verifying tickets properly, Thomas replied sharply. A divide was forming among the passengers, some supporting the airline staff's authority, others troubled by the apparent discrimination. The first-class cabin had become an impromptu courtroom with passengers taking sides. Sophia Martinez emerged from the galley, gathering her courage. Ms. Walsh, she said quietly, shouldn't we verify the reservations in the system? That's the protocol for seating disputes. Karen turned sharply. Return to your station, Martinez. We don't need verification for obvious issues. Sophia retreated, cheeks burning with shame. She'd tried not hard enough, but she'd tried. She caught Amara's eye briefly and saw recognition there. The most important documentation was happening through Amara's live stream. Her followers were growing steadily. 305, 437, 528 viewers. The connection stuttered occasionally, causing brief interruptions in the feed. She carefully positioned the phone to capture everything while battery warnings flashed down to 48%. The comments were becoming increasingly urgent. "Someone call the news. This is going viral. Those girls need help. I'm screen recording this in case they shut down the stream." At Pinnacle Airlines headquarters in Dallas, social media manager Jessica Miller stared at her screen in growing alarm. The metrics were unusual but not yet catastrophic. Twitter named her Pinnacle. Airline scandal beginning to appear in Atlanta and Chicago. Instagram, 800+ shares of passenger videos. TikTok, a live stream from Flight 783 with growing viewership. Reddit, a thread gaining traction on r/public freakout. Jessica was 32, ambitious and savvy about brand protection. She'd joined Pinnacle after a successful stint at a tech company, hoping to modernize the airline's digital presence. She'd also noticed the company's reactive approach to customer complaints, particularly those involving potential bias. "Sir, we have a situation developing," Jessica told her supervisor, marketing director, Brian Foster. "There's a live stream from Flight 783 showing what appears to be a seating dispute with 2 African-American teenagers in first class." Brian wiped his forehead. "Seating disputes happen every day. What makes this one concerning? The girls appear to be well-spoken, calm, and have valid tickets. Airport security is involved now. It's gaining traction across platforms." Brian frowned. "Monitor it, but let's not overreact. These things usually blow over when the passengers comply." Jessica hesitated. "The thing is, sir, they appear to be right. Our staff hasn't verified their tickets in the system. It looks discriminatory." "Do we know who these passengers are?" Brian asked, now concerned. "Not yet. I've asked customer relations to check the manifest." On the executive floor, CEO Victoria Patterson was in a quarterly board meeting reviewing maintenance cost projections when her assistant slipped her a note. "Potential PR situation developing on Flight 783. Social media monitoring flagged it." Victoria glanced at the note, then slid it aside. With 27 years in aviation, she'd weathered countless situations. Most resolved themselves with minimal intervention. The board meeting continued uninterrupted for now. In the social media command center, Jessica Miller's team was analyzing viewer demographics. "There's something interesting about this stream," an analyst reported. "We're seeing unusual engagement from aviation industry professionals, legal experts, corporate trainers, journalists with verified accounts." Brian Foster was now standing behind Jessica's chair. "How many viewers currently?" "About 850. Not massive yet, but growing steadily. The engagement rate is what's concerning. Nearly 40% of viewers are commenting or sharing." Jessica's phone pinged with a text from Customer Relations Manifest Check Complete. 2A and 2B, occupied by Olivia and Amara Johnson minors traveling unaccompanied. Tickets purchased through corporate portal by Johnson Aviation Technologies. Jessica froze, then showed the message to Brian, whose face drained of color. "Johnson Aviation Technologies." "As in our primary maintenance contractor." "I believe so, sir." Brian immediately picked up the phone. "Get me Victoria Patterson. Now." As Officer Sullivan moved closer, Olivia fought to control her rising anxiety. Her mind, typically occupied with quantum mechanics and mathematical formulas, now calculated a different kind of problem: how to maintain dignity while facing public humiliation. Despite her outward calm, her thoughts raced. What if they force us off the plane? What if this goes viral and everyone at school sees it? Will this affect my NASA application? She glanced at her sister, drawing strength from Amara's steady presence. While Olivia processed the world through scientific precision, Amara navigated it through social connections and technological solutions. Different approaches, complementary strengths. Amara focused on keeping her live stream stable despite the plane's spotty Wi-Fi. She'd positioned her phone strategically while monitoring the battery life, now down to 43%. A power bank was in her backpack, but reaching for it might disrupt the documentation. Inside, she felt a mixture of anger and vindication. Their father had prepared them for moments like this, though they'd hoped never to need those lessons. Elijah Johnson had built Johnson Aviation Technologies from a small maintenance operation into a powerhouse that serviced 68% of the commercial aircraft in North America. But he never allowed his daughters to believe their father's success would shield them from prejudice. In certain situations, he had explained, "People will see your skin before they see anything else about you. When that happens, remember, document everything. Maintain your dignity, and make them reveal themselves." Last year, Amara had been followed through an upscale department store by security. 6 months ago, Olivia had been questioned repeatedly about whose science project she was presenting at a regional competition, despite wearing her school's uniform and name badge. Each incident had been a lesson. Their father would listen, validate their feelings, then help them strategize responses that protected their dignity without escalating situations. Emotional reactions give others power over you, he would explain. Strategic responses keep the power in your hands. Now, as Officer Sullivan loomed over them, Olivia remembered her father's words. She controlled her breathing in for 4 counts. Hold for 4, out for 4. A technique that helped her before physics competitions. Amara's live stream continued despite connectivity issues. Comments flooded in. "Stay strong, girls. This is outrageous. I'm contacting the FAA. These officers are making a career-ending mistake." The viewer count had reached 712 with periodic drops as the connection fluctuated. Olivia's phone, now on the seat beside her, continued to buzz with incoming calls from their father. They'd agreed to call him if there was trouble, but things had escalated so quickly. Now, with Sullivan preparing restraints, answering had become impossible. Officer Olivia said, her voice remarkably steady despite her racing heart. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Our tickets are valid for these seats." Sullivan hardly seemed to hear her. He was focused on resolving the situation quickly, getting the plane moving and ending his double shift. Seating disputes were routine. Follow procedure. Remove the problem file, the paperwork. He'd already mentally classified this as another case of passengers trying to upgrade themselves without paying. What he couldn't know was that this routine call would soon upend the entire airline industry. The cabin of Flight 783 had transformed from a typical first-class compartment into something resembling a courtroom with passengers taking sides and witnesses emerging. Laura Hernandez stood tall, her judicial bearing unmistakable. "Officer Sullivan, I am a retired federal judge, and I am formally documenting that these young women have presented valid boarding passes which you have failed to verify. This constitutes inappropriate detention without cause." During her years on the bench, Hernandez had seen countless cases where procedure was used as a shield for bias. She'd promised herself in retirement that she wouldn't remain silent when witnessing injustice. Thomas Wilson had moved to the aisle, his phone recording steadily. "As a professional in corporate equity training, I can state with certainty that this incident will become a textbook example of discrimination if it's not corrected immediately." Wilson recognized the pattern from hundreds of corporate training sessions he'd conducted. He'd built his consultancy helping companies avoid exactly this kind of situation. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was now documenting rather than preventing such an incident. From row 5, businessman Richard Taylor called out, "Can we please get this resolved quickly? Some of us have connections to make in Chicago." A woman in her 40s added, "This is ridiculous. When flight attendants give instructions, you follow them. That's basic travel etiquette." An elderly gentleman in 4D countered, What's ridiculous is watching these young ladies being treated this way when they've done nothing wrong. How do you know they've done nothing wrong? Challenged another passenger. Maybe there's information we don't have. The information we all need is in their reservation, Thomas Wilson replied sharply, which no one has bothered to verify. The division in the cabin reflected broader societal tensions, with passengers falling into distinct camps, those recognizing the injustice unfolding before them, those prioritizing order and authority regardless of its fairness, and those simply wanting to reach their destination without delay. Flight attendant Sophia Martinez stood near the galley, visibly distressed. Though junior to Vanessa, she knew proper protocol was being violated. Passenger verification required checking the system, not making visual judgments. She'd been with Pinnacle Airlines for 3 years and had witnessed concerning patterns, but never something this blatant. Sophia's own story weighed on her conscience. Her mother had immigrated from El Salvador, working cleaning jobs to give Sophia opportunities. She'd taught Sophia to keep her head down to avoid conflict with authority, but she'd also taught her about justice. Miss Martinez, Laura Hernandez, called out, noticing her discomfort. As a Pinnacle employee, can you confirm whether anyone has actually verified these tickets in your system? Before Sophia could answer, Karen Walsh cut in. This matter is being handled by security now. All staff will refrain from further comment. But Sophia's silence was answer enough for the observant passengers. Her eyes met Amara's, briefly communicating regret and conflict. Thomas Wilson addressed the cabin at large. Everyone witnessing this should know that what we're seeing may constitute a civil rights violation. I encourage you to preserve any documentation you have of this incident. The effect was immediate. More phones emerged, recording from different angles. Passengers began sharing contact information, creating an impromptu witness network. This is delaying. Everyone complained a man in a business suit. Just move to different seats and sort it out later. Would you give up seats you paid for? Challenged an older woman. These girls have done nothing wrong. Officer Sullivan looked increasingly uncomfortable as the professional and affluent crowd divided before him. His radio crackled with a message from dispatch asking for a status update. Still working to remove 2 uncooperative passengers, he reported, though his voice lacked conviction. Laura Hernandez overheard and addressed him directly. Officer, I strongly recommend you revise that statement. These young women have been entirely cooperative while asserting their legitimate rights. Karen Walsh's composure began to crack. What should have been a routine removal of passengers from seats they didn't belong in had evolved into a documented incident with multiple credible witnesses. Outside Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport reporter Alexandra Bennett from Channel 9 News received an alert about a developing situation. Within minutes, she had dispatched a camera crew to the terminal while monitoring the social media feeds from her news van. We're seeing what appears to be a significant incident aboard a Pinnacle Airlines flight, she dictated to her producer. 2 African-American teenage girls in first class are being detained by airport security after airline staff accuse them of having fake tickets. Multiple witnesses are disputing the airline's claims. Alexandra had built her career covering transportation issues in the Atlanta area. She knew the implications of racial profiling allegations at one of the nation's busiest airports. Across town, aviation industry blogger Robert Taylor was already writing a preliminary analysis. Pinnacle Airlines faces potential discrimination complaint. What we know so far. His industry connections meant this story would reach key aviation executives within hours. As he typed, he received 3 text messages from industry contacts asking if he was seeing the developing situation on Flight 783. At CNN headquarters, the social media monitoring team flagged the incident for the transportation desk. A producer began reaching out to Pinnacle Airlines for comment while preparing a potential segment for later broadcasts, not breaking news yet, but a situation to monitor. The Washington Post's transportation reporter had started gathering information for a possible story. Allegations of discrimination on Pinnacle Airlines Flight. Investigation pending. Industry analysts were taking notice as well. Financial reporter Jamie Williams at Bloomberg observed unusual activity in Pinnacle's stock minor fluctuations that suggested insider awareness of a developing situation. She called their investor relations department, who placed her on hold. The NAACP regional office had been tagged in several social media posts about the incident. Their communications director began monitoring the situation and preparing a preliminary statement. All of this activity happened within minutes of Amara's live stream reaching 1,500 viewers, still modest by viral standards, but growing steadily and attracting attention from key stakeholders. Back at Pinnacle Airlines headquarters, the crisis had reached the executive suite. CEO Victoria Patterson ended her board meeting abruptly after receiving urgent messages from corporate communications. "I want a direct line to that aircraft immediately," she instructed as she strode toward the Emergency Operations Center. "Get me the captain, get me the gate manager, and someone tell me exactly what's happening on that flight." Her chief legal officer, Daniel Morrison, joined her. "We're running background checks now, but early reports suggest the passengers are the daughters of someone significant. The social media response is concerning." "Define concerning," Victoria demanded. "Nearly 2,000 live viewers. Mentions from aviation industry accounts. Stock showing slight volatility. The timing is particularly bad with the maintenance contract negotiations next week." Victoria's face hardened. "Nothing is unfixable if you move fast enough. Get me that captain now." In the operations center, staff scrambled to establish communications with Flight 783. The crisis management protocol activated public relations, preparing preliminary statements. Legal reviewing potential liability. Operations, calculating delay impacts. Customer service, preparing compensation packages. Social media, monitoring real-time response. This was no longer just a routine customer service issue. It had become a potential corporate crisis with significant financial and reputational implications. Officer Sullivan stood awkwardly in the first-class cabin, the twins before him, a growing chorus of disagreement surrounding him. His radio crackled again. "Sullivan, what's your status? HQ is asking for updates on the Pinnacle situation." The mention of headquarters involvement was unusual. Typically, seating disputes were handled without upper management attention. Sullivan sensed the situation shifting beneath his feet. 2 subjects still in disputed seats, he reported. Working to resolve. Laura Hernandez stepped directly into his path. "Officer, I am formally notifying you that you are participating in what appears to be an unlawful detention. These young women have presented valid boarding passes for these exact seats. At no point has any airline representative actually verified their claim in the system." Sullivan felt trapped between protocols. Airport security procedures required him to support airline personnel in seating disputes, but his training also emphasized verification and de-escalation, neither of which had happened here. Thomas Wilson added, "I'm documenting this entire interaction for a corporate training program on bias incidents. Every person involved will be identified." Officer Sullivan's confidence wavered. In his 7 years with airport security, he'd removed dozens of unruly passengers, but none had generated this level of organized resistance from other passengers. None had been live-streamed to over 2,000 viewers, and none had featured such well-spoken, composed teenagers who seemed to understand their rights better than he did. Vanessa Rodriguez remained defiant, though her voice betrayed increasing uncertainty. "They're delaying an entire aircraft. They need to move or be removed." Karen Walsh's professional demeanor had crumbled completely. She kept glancing at her silent tablet, the very device that could have verified the tickets in seconds. 20 years of airline work had taught her to trust her instincts about passengers. But something about this situation felt increasingly wrong. Behind them, Sophia Martinez had begun quietly checking the passenger manifest on her handheld device. Company policy allowed any crew member to verify seating, though junior staff rarely contradicted senior decisions. Her fingers trembled slightly as she entered the flight information. The device confirmed exactly what the twins had claimed. Seats 2A and 2B were assigned to Olivia and Amara Johnson. first-class tickets purchased through a corporate portal 3 weeks earlier by Johnson Aviation Technologies. Sophia looked up conflict written across her features. Speaking up meant risking her position a job that supported her family. Staying silent meant becoming complicit in discrimination. Olivia noticed Sophia checking her device and met her eyes briefly. Something in that glance, the dignity, the silent plea for basic fairness, made Sophia's decision clear. "Ms. Walsh." Sophia said, her voice quiet but firm. "I've checked the system. These passengers are correctly seated. Their tickets are valid for first class." Karen Walsh turned sharply. "I did not authorize you to check anything, Martinez. It's standard procedure for disputed seating," Sophia replied, gaining confidence. "Their reservation is confirmed. Seats 2A and 2B, Johnson Aviation Technologies corporate booking." The name hung in the air. Karen's face shifted from anger to confusion. Johnson Aviation Technologies Officer Sullivan, noticing the change in tone, asked, "What's Johnson Aviation Technologies?" From his seat, Thomas Wilson answered, "Only the company that maintains most of Pinnacle's fleet, including this aircraft." A ripple of recognition moved through the cabin as passengers with aviation industry knowledge grasped the implications. Vanessa's confidence faltered for the first time. "Check it again," she instructed Sophia. "There must be a mistake." "I've verified it twice," Sophia confirmed, standing her ground. "These passengers are in their assigned seats." Olivia spoke up, her voice clear despite the tension. "Officer Sullivan, now that our seating has been verified, may I please make a phone call to our father? He's been trying to reach us." Sullivan hesitated, unsure of protocol now that airline staff were contradicting each other. "Make it quick," he finally said. As Olivia reached for her phone, Amara continued live streaming. The viewer count had reached 3,247, with comments pouring in faster than anyone could read. "Hi, Dad," Olivia said as the call connected. "Olivia, what's happening? You and Amara haven't answered my calls." Elijah Johnson's voice was controlled but concerned, the voice of a father, first CEO, second. "We're having some confusion about our seating arrangements on Flight 783, Olivia replied calmly, though her hand trembled slightly. "Confusion? Explain." Her father's voice shifted slightly. "The flight attendant believed our first-class tickets were fake. Airport security was called. We've been threatened with removal, though a flight attendant just verified our reservation." There was a pause, the heavy silence of a man calculating numerous variables simultaneously. When Elijah Johnson spoke again, his tone had transformed. The concerned father had receded and the CEO had emerged. "Put me on speakerphone, please. I'd like to address whoever is in charge." Olivia held the phone higher. "You're on speaker, Dad. I'm here with Officer Sullivan from Airport Security, Flight Attendant Rodriguez, Gate Supervisor Walsh, and several passengers who are witnessing this. This is Elijah Johnson, CEO of Johnson Aviation Technologies." "To whom am I speaking?" The name hit the first-class cabin like a thunderbolt. Officer Sullivan froze suddenly, recognizing the corporate name from his security briefings. Johnson Aviation Technologies, the company responsible for maintaining 68% of commercial aircraft in North America, including every single plane in Pinnacle Airlines Flight. Karen Walsh's face drained of color so rapidly she had to steady herself against a seat back. 20 years of airline experience had taught her to recognize names that mattered in aviation, and Johnson was at the top of that list. Vanessa Rodriguez stepped back involuntarily, as if the phone itself had become dangerous. Her confident posture collapsed as she realized the magnitude of her misjudgment. I'm Officer Michael Sullivan, Airport Security," Sullivan stammered, acutely aware of the career implications unfolding. "And I'm Karen Walsh, Gate Supervisor," Karen added, her voice barely audible. "I see Elijah Johnson," replied his tone measured and precise. "Would someone please explain why my daughters were threatened with removal from their assigned seats?" Karen Walsh attempted to regain composure. Sir, there was some confusion about their seating assignment. We were simply following protocol. Protocol. The word hung in the air. Ms. Walsh, my executive assistant, booked those tickets 3 weeks ago. First-class seats, 2A and 2B. Confirmation number PNL7749J8. The purchase was $4,200 on our corporate American Express Black Card. Would you like the full transaction details? Amara's live stream had now reached 4,358 viewers, still modest by viral standards, but significant for an in-flight incident. The connectivity issues had stabilized as the plane remained at the gate. The comments section exploded with recognition. Johnson Aviation Technologies. Those are the CEO's daughters. This airline just committed corporate suicide. Someone's about to lose everything, Thomas Wilson whispered to Laura Hernandez. Johnson maintains Pinnacle's entire fleet. Laura nodded. I serve on a judicial advisory committee with Elijah. He's not just powerful, he's meticulous and principled. Richard Taylor, who had earlier complained about the delay, now sat silently understanding the business implications unfolding before him. As a corporate executive himself, he recognized the sound of a major contract about to be reconsidered. Sophia Martinez stood straighter, vindicated in her decision to verify the tickets. Her small act of courage had potentially saved her job, while others had jeopardized theirs. Ms. Walsh, Elijah Johnson continued, his voice now emanating from Olivia's phone with crystal clarity. Let me provide some context about Johnson Aviation Technologies' relationship with Pinnacle Airlines. Karen Walsh managed a weak "yes, sir" while frantically signaling Officer Sullivan to step back from the twins. We currently maintain 847 Pinnacle aircraft under our primary service contract. This represents 68% of your operational fleet. Our 12,000 certified technicians service your planes at 89 airports across North America. The numbers hit like financial bombs. Passengers who understood aviation began whispering urgently. Business travelers were pulling out phones to check stock prices. Our annual maintenance contract with Pinnacle is valued at $387 million, but that's just our standard services. Elijah paused, letting the weight of his words settle before continuing. Johnson Aviation Technologies also holds specialized contracts for avionics upgrades, emergency maintenance, and regulatory compliance. Combined value $847 million annually with Pinnacle alone. Vanessa Rodriguez was no longer smiling. The scattered business cards on Olivia's tray table suddenly made terrible sense. She had insulted the daughters of the man whose company kept every Pinnacle plane certified to fly. I should also mention that I serve on the Federal Aviation Administration's Safety Advisory Board. I chair the International Aviation Maintenance Standards Committee. Next week, I'm testifying before Congress about airline safety protocols and industry accountability standards. Officer Sullivan received urgent messages through his radio. Sullivan, stand down immediately. Repeat. Stand down. Corporate emergency protocols now in effect. The security officer stepped back, professional training overriding his confusion. He'd been taught to recognize when situations escalated beyond his authority, and this had clearly entered that territory. Laura Hernandez addressed the phone directly. Elijah, it's Laura Hernandez. I've witnessed the entire incident. Your daughters have conducted themselves with extraordinary dignity. They presented valid boarding passes repeatedly. At no point did airline staff actually verify their tickets in the system until flight attendant Martinez took the initiative. Thank you, Laura Elijah responded. I appreciate your testimony. Thomas Wilson spoke next. Mr. Johnson, Thomas Wilson, here founder of Wilson Diversity Consultants. I've documented the entire incident. The bias was evident from the first interaction. Your daughters did absolutely nothing wrong. Several other passengers voiced similar observations, creating a damning chorus of witness accounts. Sarah Martinez held up her phone. My Instagram story about this already has over 1,000 shares. People are outraged by what they're seeing. Through the phone, they heard Elijah Johnson typing the CEO was multitasking even during this crisis. His voice remained steady as he outlined the contractual realities. Our service agreement with Pinnacle includes several relevant clauses. Section 12.4 specifically addresses discrimination incidents involving Johnson family members or employees. He let that sink in. Any verified bias incident triggers immediate contract review. Section 15.8 covers termination penalties. Should Pinnacle choose to end our relationship, they owe $50 million in early termination fees. Should Johnson Aviation terminate due to discrimination violations, there are no penalties to us. Karen Walsh was now visibly shaking. She understood the mathematics. Losing Johnson Aviation would cost Pinnacle nearly $900 million in contracts, plus $50 million in penalties, plus the impossible task of finding replacement maintenance services within FAA compliance timelines. Effectively, it would ground the entire airline indefinitely. Beyond the financial implications, Elijah continued, "This is about how your organization treats human beings. My daughters presented valid tickets. They were seated in their assigned seats, yet they were publicly humiliated, threatened with removal, and treated with contempt based solely on assumptions about who belongs in first class." In the galley, Sophia Martinez felt a complex mixture of emotions, vindication for doing the right thing, but also concern about the fallout for her colleagues. Vanessa Rodriguez had been difficult to work with, often making biased comments during crew briefings, but Karen Walsh had simply been following the unwritten norms that pervaded the company culture. "I want to thank Flight Attendant Martinez for having the integrity to follow proper verification procedures," Elijah added, causing Sophia to look up in surprise. Integrity shouldn't be exceptional. It should be standard. At Pinnacle Airlines headquarters, the Emergency Operations Center had transformed into Crisis Command Central. Screens displayed live social media metrics, stock trading activity, Flight 783 status, crisis team deployment, media monitoring, messaging development. CEO Victoria Patterson stared at the live stream playing on the wall monitor, watching in horror as the full scale of the disaster unfolded. The viewer count had passed 7,000 and was accelerating. "Johnson Aviation," she whispered. "Their daughters. How did nobody recognize them?" Victoria had built her career on meticulous operations management, rising from flight attendant to executive through discipline and attention to detail. In 27 years at Pinnacle, she'd never faced a crisis with this level of existential threat. Her executive team had assembled in the Crisis Management Center. Legal operations, communications, and human resources all waited for direction as the CEO processed what was happening. "Our stock is beginning to react," reported the CFO Bradley Kim. "Down 4% in pre-market trading on unusual volume. Institutional investors are calling for information. Media requests are coming in from everywhere," added Communications Director Hannah Roberts. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, Wall Street Journal, New York Times. They all want statements within the hour. The FAA has called twice, the compliance officer noted. "They're expressing concern about the incident." Victoria straightened her jacket. "Get me a direct line to Elijah Johnson immediately. Then prepare the corporate jet. I'm flying to Atlanta personally. That will take at least 90 minutes, her chief of staff warned. "Then I have 90 minutes to stop the bleeding before I face him in person. Get me that phone line now." Across the corporate headquarters, emergency protocols activated, revealing the complex machinery of corporate crisis management. Legal teams' urgent tasks. Review the Johnson Aviation contract for vulnerability points. Assess potential civil rights violation. Liability. Prepare termination paperwork for staff involved. Evaluate compliance issues with DOT regulations. Draft emergency settlement parameters. HR department initiatives. Pull personnel files on Walsh and Rodriguez review. Past complaints against both employees. Accelerate bias training. Deployment. Prepare leadership communication to all staff. Set up employee assistance resources, PR team actions. Draft multiple statement scenarios. Brief media spokespersons. Prepare social media. Response strategy. Contact third-party crisis PR specialists. Monitor sentiment analysis across platforms. Operations calculations. Projected financial impact of contract loss. Timeline for potential fleet grounding. Alternative maintenance, vendor availability. Passenger rebooking scenarios. Legal obligations to stranded travelers. Customer service preparations. Compensation packages for flight. 783 passengers. Talking points for customer service representatives. Priority response protocols for related complaints. Executive customer outreach to high-value clients. Documentation procedures for related incidents. The Board of Directors convened an emergency virtual meeting, many members calling in from vacation spots and golf courses. "This could bankrupt us," stated one director bluntly. "Not goodwill corrected," another. "Without Johnson's maintenance certification, we'd have to ground our fleet within days. No other provider could absorb our volume in under 6 months. The reputational damage alone." A third director began but didn't finish the thought. It didn't need stating. Meanwhile, competitors were already reacting, recognizing both danger and opportunity in Pinnacle's crisis. United Airlines CEO messaged their executive team, "Review all diversity protocols immediately. Full audit of first-class boarding procedures by end of day. Prepare contingency for Pinnacle passengers if they ground." Delta's chief counsel circulated a memo Johnson Aviation Incident Response Team activated. Prepare contingency if similar issues arise. Review our maintenance contract protections. American Airlines social media team received an urgent directive, monitor Pinnacle situation. Prepare positive inclusivity messaging. Avoid appearing opportunistic while standing ready to assist displaced passengers. The ripples spread beyond airlines. Boeing executives called an emergency meeting to discuss potential impacts on their delivery schedule if Johnson Aviation resources were reallocated. Airbus representatives began calling their airline customers to reinforce their commitment to inclusive passenger experiences. The FAA's regional director instructed his team, "Prepare for possible emergency inspections if Johnson Aviation suspends Pinnacle certification. This could affect thousands of flights." All of this corporate activity occurred within 15 minutes of Elijah Johnson revealing his identity on the live stream. The complex machinery of crisis management had activated, but it was already too late to prevent significant damage. On Flight 783, Elijah Johnson's voice continued from the phone speaker, now addressing the situation with the measured precision of someone accustomed to high-stakes negotiations. Johnson Aviation Technologies doesn't just service Pinnacle. We maintain aircraft for Delta, American United Southwest, and JetBlue. Combined annual contracts $2.8 billion. The implications were staggering. One discrimination incident could ripple through the entire aviation industry. Every passenger in first class now understood they were witnessing not just a personal injustice, but a potential industry-wide inflection point. We employ 47,000 certified technicians worldwide. Our safety certifications are required for FAA compliance on 73% of North American commercial flights. Then Elijah's voice softened slightly, revealing the father beneath the CEO. "But beyond all the business implications, these are my daughters, 16 years old, traveling to visit their grandmother. They've been flying since they were toddlers. They know aircraft safety better than most airline employees." The emotional weight hit the cabin. This wasn't just corporate warfare. It was about 2 teenagers being humiliated. Olivia and Amara have never caused problems on any flight. They're honor students. Olivia is a NASA internship finalist and physics competition champion. Amara has developed technology currently being reviewed by major investors. They volunteer at aviation museums. They're considering careers in aerospace engineering. Olivia felt a complex mix of emotions as her father spoke. Pride in his defense, embarrassment at having required it, concern about the scale of the response. She and Amara exchanged glances, a silent conversation about the unexpected magnitude of what had begun as a routine flight. Laura Hernandez wiped away a tear. "Sir, your daughters have conducted themselves with remarkable grace and dignity throughout this ordeal." Now fully freed from any threat of restraints, Olivia and Amara sat tall in their seats, composed despite the ordeal they'd just endured. Amara's live stream continued now with over 11,000 viewers witnessing everything in real time. Battery warnings flashed on her phone down to 21%, but she'd managed to connect her power bank discreetly. Elijah Johnson set his ultimatum. "I notice it's now 9:50 a.m. I'm giving Pinnacle Airlines exactly 1 hour to demonstrate they understand the severity of this situation. By 10:50 a.m., I expect a personal apology from your CEO to my daughters, immediate termination of any staff involved in this discriminatory incident, a clear action plan for preventing similar incidents, compensation for the emotional distress my daughters have experienced. A public statement acknowledging this failure and outlining corrective measures." The silence that followed was deafening. Officer Sullivan had retreated to the jet bridge, frantically explaining to his supervisor how he'd become entangled in a corporate crisis. Karen Walsh stood frozen, her career flashing before her eyes. Vanessa Rodriguez had disappeared into the rear galley, avoiding the accusing stares of passengers. "If these conditions aren't met," Elijah continued, "Johnson Aviation Technologies will immediately suspend all maintenance operations for Pinnacle Airlines pending a comprehensive review of our contract. This would effectively ground your entire fleet within 24 hours. The live stream comments exploded with corporate implications. "This is aviation history happening live. Pinnacle is finished. Watch their stock crater in 3, 2, 1. Biggest corporate leverage play I've ever seen." A financial analyst in seat 6B was already frantically texting his trading desk PNCL. Major contract risk, immediate sell recommendation, potential grounding event. Sophia Martinez stood in the aisle, her decision to speak up now validated beyond anything she could have imagined. Yet she felt no triumph, only a sobering awareness of how easily this injustice could have proceeded unchallenged had she remained silent. "Mr. Johnson," Sophia said, gathering her courage to speak directly to the CEO, "I want to apologize for not intervening sooner. What happened to your daughters was wrong. I should have verified their tickets immediately when the question arose." "Thank you, Ms. Martinez," Elijah responded. "Accountability begins with acknowledging errors. I appreciate your integrity." As the ultimatum settled over the cabin, passengers began to grasp that they were witnessing not just a customer service failure, but a pivotal moment that would be studied in business schools and corporate training programs for years to come. At exactly 10:05 a.m., 15 minutes after Elijah Johnson's ultimatum, Olivia's phone rang. The caller ID displayed Pinnacle Airlines Corporate. The first-class cabin, already tense with anticipation, fell completely silent as Olivia answered on speaker. "This is Olivia Johnson. Ms. Johnson, this is Victoria Patterson, CEO of Pinnacle Airlines. I'm calling to speak with you, your sister, and your father, if he's still on the line." Victoria Patterson sat in her office surrounded by her crisis management team. In her 27 years at Pinnacle, she had risen from flight attendant to executive through discipline and strategic thinking. Now she faced the most consequential call of her career, one that would determine whether the airline survived the week. Olivia glanced at Amara, whose live stream now showed over 15,000 concurrent viewers. "My father is available." "One moment." A conference call was quickly established. Victoria Patterson's voice carried the weight of corporate accountability. "Mr. Johnson, I am calling to personally apologize for the unconscionable treatment your daughters received today on our aircraft. There is absolutely no excuse for what occurred. It represents a complete failure of our training, our culture, and our values." Every passenger in the cabin listened intently. This wasn't just an apology, it was a corporate capitulation happening in real time. I want to inform you that effective immediately, Flight attendant Vanessa Rodriguez has been terminated from Pinnacle Airlines. Gate supervisor Karen Walsh has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, though I anticipate that will result in termination as well. In the galley, Vanessa stood motionless, hearing her 23-year career end via speakerphone. Her mind raced through the implications: health insurance, mortgage payments, retirement benefits, all vanishing because of assumptions she'd made about two teenagers. Karen Walsh's face showed complex emotions: shock at the swift consequences, embarrassment at the public nature of her downfall, and dawning recognition of her own responsibility. Her decades-long career built on protecting the airline's premium cabins had collapsed in 15 minutes. We are implementing emergency bias training for all customer-facing staff effective today, Victoria continued. I've also directed our legal team to prepare compensation for the distress caused to Olivia and Amara. Victoria Patterson continued, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. Mr. Johnson, I'm currently en route to Atlanta on our corporate jet. I'll be landing in approximately 90 minutes and would welcome the opportunity to meet with you and your daughters in person to further discuss how Pinnacle can make this right. Elijah Johnson's response was measured. Ms. Patterson, I appreciate your prompt action. My daughters and I will consider meeting with you later today. In the meantime, I expect the remaining items on my list to be addressed. They will be, sir. Our public statement is being finalized now and will acknowledge our failure while outlining specific corrective measures. We're also establishing an independent oversight committee to review all passenger treatment protocols. The corporate surrender was complete, and public witnessed by tens of thousands online and a plane full of influential passengers. Victoria Patterson addressed the twins directly. Olivia Amara, on behalf of everyone at Pinnacle Airlines, I offer my deepest apology. The treatment you received was inexcusable. No passenger, regardless of age, race, or any other factor, should ever experience what you endured today. Amara, still live streaming, responded with poise. We appreciate your apology, Ms. Patterson. We hope this leads to meaningful change for all passengers, Olivia added. Our concern extends beyond just our experience to ensure others don't face similar discrimination. Their maturity in the face of such a public incident only emphasized the absurdity of the initial assumptions made about them. As the call concluded, Captain Reynolds made an announcement to the entire aircraft. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I want to personally apologize for the unacceptable treatment of our passengers in first class. Pinnacle Airlines is committed to providing a respectful environment for all travelers. We will be departing shortly with a new cabin crew. Thank you for your patience. Behind the scenes, Pinnacle's stock had opened down 6.2%, representing nearly $400 million in lost market value in the first minutes of trading. Financial analysts were issuing alerts to clients, and institutional investors were demanding emergency briefings. The transformation aboard Flight 783 happened with remarkable speed. Within minutes of the CEO's call, a new flight crew boarded the aircraft. Vanessa Rodriguez and Karen Walsh were escorted down the jet bridge by airline management, neither speaking as they departed. Vanessa's face showed shock and disbelief. 23 years of service ended in a 15-minute phone call. She would spend the coming weeks replaying the incident, trying to understand how assumptions she'd made countless times before had suddenly ended her career. Karen Walsh walked stiffly, her professional mask finally cracking as she reached the terminal. Tears streamed down her face as she realized that the standards she'd upheld for decades had actually been biases in disguise. The replacement crew, led by senior flight attendant Robert Anderson, approached the Johnson twins with professional courtesy. Ms. Olivia, Ms. Amara, on behalf of our crew, please accept our apologies for your experience today. We're honored to have you aboard, and will ensure you have a comfortable journey to Chicago. Anderson, a 20-year veteran with Pinnacle, had been specifically selected for his exemplary customer service record and history of fair treatment to all passengers. The message from headquarters had been clear: this flight needed to be flawless from this point forward. The passenger dynamics had shifted completely. Those who had remained silent during the confrontation now seemed embarrassed by their inaction. Those who had spoken up received grateful nods from other travelers. The businessman who had complained about delays earlier now avoided eye contact with the twins. A passenger who had suggested they just move seats studied her phone intently, avoiding the judgmental glances of others. Laura Hernandez addressed the twins. "Young ladies, as a former federal judge, I've witnessed countless examples of injustice. The dignity with which you handled this situation should be taught in schools." Thomas Wilson handed them his business card. "I train Fortune 500 companies on bias prevention. If you're ever interested in sharing your experience as part of our program, we would compensate you as expert consultants." Flight attendant Sophia Martinez, who had verified the twins' tickets against pressure from her seniors, approached them tentatively. "I'm so sorry I didn't speak up more forcefully," she said, her voice trembling. "I knew what was happening was wrong." Amara smiled gently. "You tried. We noticed. I've documented everything for the internal review," Sophia added. "This won't be swept under the rug." "What will happen to you now?" Olivia asked, concerned for the flight attendant who had finally stood up for them. "I've been asked to participate in developing the new verification procedures," Sophia said with cautious pride. "Apparently, headquarters values people who follow proper protocols even when it's difficult." Throughout the cabin, passengers processed what they had witnessed. Some discussed the financial implications for Pinnacle. Others reflected on the broader social context. Many were checking their phones for news coverage, which was now spreading rapidly. CNN's breaking news banner read, "Airline CEO apologizes after African-American teens detained in first-class seats." The Wall Street Journal posted Pinnacle Airlines stock falls 8% after discrimination. Incident threatens key maintenance contract. Aviation Week's headline stated, "Industry alert. Johnson Aviation CEO threatens to ground Pinnacle fleet after daughters mistreated." Outside on the tarmac, a replacement ground crew rapidly prepared the aircraft for departure, given new priority status by air traffic control. The normal pre-departure procedures were expedited while maintaining all safety protocols. Captain Reynolds visited first class personally. "Ladies, gentlemen, I want to assure you that I had no knowledge of the situation until it had escalated. I've been with Pinnacle for 22 years and have never been more disappointed in our failure to treat passengers with respect. We will do better." As he spoke to the twins directly, his professional demeanor softened. "Young ladies, your composure throughout this situation has been remarkable. I have daughters about your age, and I can only hope they would handle themselves with such dignity if faced with similar treatment." As the aircraft finally pushed back from the gate nearly 2 hours behind schedule, Amara ended her live stream with a simple message. "Thank you to everyone who watched and supported us. Documentation creates accountability." The final viewer count, 27,116, modest by viral standards, but extraordinarily influential given the audience composition of aviation professionals, corporate executives, and industry regulators. As Flight 783 taxied toward the runway, the impact of the morning's events continued to reverberate throughout the aviation industry and beyond. At Pinnacle headquarters, CEO Victoria Patterson conducted an emergency video conference from her corporate jet, now halfway to Atlanta. Effective immediately, Pinnacle Airlines is implementing the following changes. First, we're launching the Dignity Assurance mobile app within 48 hours. Passengers can report treatment concerns instantly with direct escalation to executive leadership. The announcement was being simultaneously released to the press aviation industry groups and social media channels. Second, mandatory monthly bias training for all customer-facing employees. No exceptions. Failure to complete training results in immediate suspension. Third, the $10 million Johnson Pinnacle Diversity Scholarship Fund is being established today. Our legal team is drafting the paperwork now." As Victoria outlined these changes, Elijah Johnson watched from his office in Atlanta, monitoring both the corporate response and the broader industry reaction. "That fund will change lives, Ms. Patterson," he noted. "Make sure it reaches students who face the same barriers my daughters experienced today." "Absolutely," she replied. "We're partnering with historically black colleges and universities to identify recipients." While this conversation occurred, aviation industry executives were holding emergency meetings across the country. Delta, American United, and other major carriers were reviewing their own protocols, fearful of similar incidents. Delta's CEO convened a special meeting. "I want every customer-facing procedure audited by end of week. Particular focus on first-class and premium cabin verification protocols." American Airlines fast-tracked a dormant initiative. "The electronic verification system we've been testing needs to go network-wide immediately." United's training director issued a memo. "Effective today, all verification before confrontation training modules are mandatory for all staff." Deadline 72 hours. The FAA issued a statement. "We are closely monitoring the situation involving Pinnacle Airlines and will ensure all carriers maintain appropriate passenger treatment standards." Congressional leaders from the Transportation Committee announced plans for hearings on airline passenger rights and anti-discrimination measures. Civil rights organizations issued statements of support for the Johnson twins and called for industry-wide reforms. On social media, the hashtags #DignityInFlight and #JohnsonTwins were trending nationally. Thousands shared stories of their own experiences with discrimination while traveling. Pinnacle's competitors recognized both a crisis and an opportunity. JetBlue's CEO instructed their marketing team, "Prepare a campaign emphasizing our inclusive passenger experience. Respectful but clear contrast with Pinnacle's failure." On Wall Street, Pinnacle's stock continued declining now, down 10.5% and still falling. Trading volume had increased tenfold as institutional investors reassessed the company's risk profile. Credit rating agencies placed Pinnacle on watch for potential downgrade, citing contract risk and reputational damage. The legal implications were substantial as well. Civil rights attorneys were already contacting passengers from Flight 783 seeking witness statements. Class action specialists began exploring potential cases related to patterns of discriminatory treatment by Pinnacle. Meanwhile, the twins themselves were finally enjoying the first-class service they had paid for. As the aircraft reached cruising altitude, they received a text message from their father. "So proud of you both. You handled an impossible situation with grace and strength. Grandma can't wait to see you. Love, Dad." Amara showed the message to Olivia, who smiled. "Think he'll ever let us fly alone again after this?" "Are you kidding?" Amara laughed. "We just rewrote airline policy from seats 2A and 2B. I think we can handle ourselves." As they sipped their orange juice, now served with proper first-class courtesy, Olivia reflected on the morning's events. "We're going to be all over social media when we land," probably Amara agreed. "But that's not necessarily bad. Think of how many people might see themselves in us. Maybe next time someone faces discrimination, they'll remember what documentation accomplished today." As Flight 783 approached Chicago, Olivia and Amara Johnson sat quietly in their first-class seats, finally able to process the morning's events. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving room for reflection. "Did you ever think Dad's lessons would be tested like this?" Olivia asked softly. Amara shook her head. "Not at 16. Maybe in a corporate boardroom someday, but not on a routine flight to visit Grandma." Their father had taught them from an early age about navigating spaces where they might be underestimated or unwelcome. As the son of a janitor who had built Johnson Aviation Technologies from nothing, Elijah Johnson understood both achievement and prejudice intimately. "Dignity can't be taken, only surrendered," he would tell them. It had become a family motto, repeated so often it was almost a prayer. "I was scared," Olivia admitted in a whisper, finally allowing her composed facade to slip now that they were safely airborne. When Officer Sullivan was preparing those restraints, I kept thinking about how everyone at school would see the video. Me too, Amara confessed. I kept wondering if the NASA selection committee would see it, or if this would affect your application. It's one thing to know discrimination exists in theory, Olivia continued. It's another to experience it so publicly. And yet, you never showed it, Amara said, squeezing her sister's hand. You kept your voice steady the whole time. So did you? Olivia smiled. Dad would say we turned their power against them. By refusing to react emotionally, by forcing them to reveal themselves while we maintained our dignity. Laura Hernandez approached from her seat. Young ladies, I hope you don't mind my saying this has been one of the most profound experiences of my judicial career. Watching you maintain your composure in the face of such treatment was extraordinary. Thank you, Your Honor, Olivia replied. Our father prepared us well. I'd like to offer both of you an opportunity. The judge continued. I mentor promising young people interested in law. Based on what I witnessed today, you both have remarkable potential. My card. She handed each twin her contact information. The legal profession needs voices like yours. Thank you, Amara said, genuinely touched. I'm more interested in technology, but Olivia's been considering law alongside physics. The two fields are more compatible than you might think. Hernandez smiled. Both seek underlying patterns and fundamental truths. Thomas Wilson joined the conversation. The corporate world needs voices like yours as well. The way you documented everything while maintaining your dignity, that's a masterclass in strategic response. Wilson had spent decades helping corporations understand bias, often struggling to find examples that executives could relate to. Would you consider allowing me to use today's incident, anonymized of course, in my corporate training materials? The twins exchanged glances. We'd need to discuss it with our father. Olivia answered, but if it helps prevent similar incidents, we'd be interested. Sophia Martinez brought fresh orange juice for the twins. We're beginning our descent soon. Is there anything else I can get you? We're fine, thank you, Amara replied, then added, Will you be okay? After everything that happened, Sophia seemed surprised by their concern for her well-being. Yes. In fact, the Chicago base director has already contacted me about participating in the new training program. Your experience might help change how we operate. I hope so, Olivia said. It shouldn't take a CEO father for people to be treated with respect. That's what makes your response so important, Sophia replied. You stood up for yourselves before anyone knew who your father was. As the plane began its descent, Captain Reynolds made a final announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we're approaching Chicago O'Hare International Airport. On behalf of the entire crew, I want to thank you for your patience today. To our passengers in first class, and particularly to Ms. Olivia and Ms. Amara Johnson, I offer my personal apology for your experience. Pinnacle Airlines is committed to ensuring nothing like this happens again. The twins exchanged glances. Their father's voice echoed in their minds. It's not about winning the moment. It's about changing what comes after. When the aircraft touched down in Chicago, something unexpected happened. As passengers prepared to deplane, they began to applaud not for the flight crew or the landing, but for the two teenagers who had transformed an act of discrimination into a catalyst for change. Olivia felt tears threatening for the first time that day, not from the humiliation earlier, but from this spontaneous recognition of their dignity. She squeezed Amara's hand under the armrest. Dad always said our response to injustice defines us more than the injustice itself, Olivia whispered. Amara smiled, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of their victory. I think we responded pretty well. As they gathered their belongings, Olivia's phone chimed with a text from their father. Grandma's waiting at arrivals. CNN just called for an interview. Your choice whether to accept. Either way, I'm proud beyond words. You didn't just stand your ground, you changed the ground itself. The twins stepped off the aircraft into a future they had reshaped not just for themselves but for countless travelers who would never know their names, but would benefit from the dignity standards they had enforced at 30,000 feet. 1 week after Flight 783, the ripple effects continued to spread throughout the aviation industry and beyond. Pinnacle Airlines stock had stabilized at 15% below its pre-incident value, representing nearly $950 million in lost market capitalization. Wall Street analysts had downgraded the company from buy to hold, citing significant reputational damage and operational uncertainty. In a press conference that garnered national attention, CEO Victoria Patterson stood before a room full of journalists, shareholders, and industry observers. Behind her, a screen displayed the new company tagline, "Dignity in Flight." For everyone. Last week, Pinnacle Airlines failed in our most basic obligation, treating all passengers with respect and dignity, she began. The discriminatory treatment of Olivia and Amara Johnson revealed fundamental flaws in our culture and training. Today, I'm announcing comprehensive changes to address these failures. The cameras flashed as she outlined the Johnson Protocol, a set of passenger dignity standards being implemented across all Pinnacle operations. Mandatory bias recognition training for all 24,000 employees. A new dispute resolution process requiring system verification before any passenger confrontation. Real-time reporting tools allowing passengers to document concerns. Independent oversight committee led by civil rights experts. Revised hiring practices, emphasizing inclusivity and respect. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., congressional leaders announced hearings on airline passenger rights. Both Olivia and Amara had been invited to testify about their experience. These young women demonstrated extraordinary poise under pressure, said Congresswoman Eleanor Williams. Their testimony will help shape legislation ensuring all travelers are treated with dignity. The incident had sparked a national conversation about documentation as protection against discrimination. Downloads of Amara's live streaming app had increased by 300%, and dozens of similar encounters were now being captured and shared daily across various industries. Former Pinnacle employees began coming forward with their own stories. 3 former flight attendants revealed they had been reprimanded for questioning discriminatory practices similar to those experienced by the Johnson twins. There was an unwritten policy, one whistleblower told the Washington Post. Certain passengers were flagged for additional verification based solely on appearance. Those who spoke up were labeled troublemakers. Vanessa Rodriguez gave a tearful interview to a local news station. "I've spent 23 years in aviation, and it took losing everything for me to recognize my own biases," she admitted. "I'm not asking for my job back, I'm asking other airline employees to learn from my mistake." Karen Walsh declined all interview requests, but enrolled in a bias education program and began volunteering with a community organization focused on racial reconciliation. Sophia Martinez had been promoted to Passenger Experience Specialist, a newly created role focused on equitable treatment. "I almost stayed silent that day," she told an industry publication. "That would have been easier, but not right." Johnson Aviation Technologies had maintained its contracts with Pinnacle Airlines, but with new oversight provisions and quarterly compliance reviews. The message to the industry was clear: accountability wasn't negotiable. The archived video of Amara's live stream had now been viewed over 8 million times. It had become required viewing in corporate training programs, law schools, and civil rights organizations nationwide. Throughout all this attention, Olivia and Amara had returned to their normal lives as high school students, albeit now with a national platform. They declined most interview requests, choosing instead to focus on the structural changes their experience had inspired. "We're not interested in being celebrities," Olivia told the school newspaper. "We're interested in making sure what happened to us doesn't happen to anyone else. Her physics teacher noted a subtle change in the quiet student, a new confidence when speaking up in class, a willingness to challenge assumptions that hadn't been there before. The NASA Internship Committee, far from being deterred by the incident, had specifically mentioned her grace under pressure as a desirable quality in their selection process. Amara found investors suddenly more interested in her live streaming app. She'd modified it to include real-time transcription and automatic backup to cloud storage features inspired by the connectivity challenges she'd faced during the flight. Technology can be a powerful equalizer, she explained to potential investors, but only if it's accessible when people need it most. Their father had turned down numerous offers to monetize their experience, including book deals, movie rights, and speaking engagements. This was never about profit, he told associates. It was about progress. 3 months after Flight 783, what began as a crisis response had evolved into an industry-wide transformation. The $10 million Johnson Foundation for Aviation Equity was officially launched in a ceremony at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. Elijah Johnson stood proudly with his daughters as they awarded the first round of scholarships to 50 diverse students pursuing careers in aviation. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter in aviation history, Elijah announced to the assembled crowd of industry leaders, government officials, and media. These scholarships represent our commitment to ensuring the skies are truly friendly for everyone. The foundation would fund not only educational opportunities, but also research into inclusive practices across the transportation sector. For Olivia and Amara, the ceremony represented a powerful reframing of their experience. What had begun as humiliation had transformed into opportunity for others. The symbolism wasn't lost on them. They had refused to surrender their first-class seats, and now they were creating pathways for others to occupy spaces where they might not be initially welcomed. Sophia Martinez, the flight attendant who had questioned the treatment of the twins, had been promoted to Pinnacle's newly created position, Director of Passenger Dignity. Her first act was to implement a comprehensive retraining program for all customer-facing staff. "We've completely restructured how we approach passenger interactions," she explained in an industry webinar. "Verification before confrontation is now our standard operating procedure. Assumptions have no place in aviation safety or service." The promotion had changed Sophia's life dramatically. Her increased salary allowed her mother to retire from the cleaning job she'd held for 20 years. Her younger siblings now had a path to college that hadn't existed before. She'd become living proof that standing up for what's right could lead to unexpected opportunities. Pinnacle Airlines had become an unlikely leader in corporate accountability. Their transparent response to the incident, including public progress reports on their reforms, had slowly begun rebuilding consumer trust. Their stock had recovered half its losses as investors recognized the long-term value of their structural changes. The aviation industry as a whole had implemented significant reforms. Delta introduced bias interruption training for all staff. American Airlines launched a passenger advocacy program. United developed a mobile verification system. Southwest created a passenger bill of rights, Amara's #Dignity. In-flight app developed in the weeks following the incident had already been downloaded 1.5 million times. The platform allowed passengers to document their experiences, report concerns directly to airline management, and connect with advocates if needed. Technology can be a powerful equalizer, Amara explained at a tech conference. When everyone has the ability to document their experiences, accountability becomes built into the system. She'd found unexpected mentorship through Thomas Wilson, the diversity consultant who had witnessed the original incident. His industry connections helped her refine the app's features to address specific accountability gaps in customer service contexts. Former gate supervisor Karen Walsh had given a remarkable interview to ABC News, acknowledging her role in the discrimination incident. "I failed those young women," she admitted. "I made assumptions based on appearance rather than following proper verification procedures. I'm now working with anti-bias organizations to help others recognize and correct these behaviors." The most significant industry change came from the Federal Aviation Administration, which introduced new passenger dignity regulations requiring airlines to document and justify all passenger removals. Early data showed a 58% reduction in removal incidents across all carriers. Meanwhile, Olivia and Amara continued excelling academically. Olivia's physics research on turbulence patterns had been accepted for publication in a scientific journal, a rare achievement for a high school student. Amara's tech innovations had attracted attention from venture capitalists interested in expanding her platform to other industries. Olivia had begun spending time with Judge Laura Hernandez exploring the intersection of law and science. The mentorship had opened her eyes to how legal frameworks could protect individual rights while advancing scientific progress. "I always thought I had to choose between physics and fighting injustice," Olivia told her father. "Judge Hernandez is showing me how they can work together." For Elijah Johnson, watching his daughters transform adversity into opportunity fulfilled his deepest hopes as a parent. He'd built a business empire to give them advantages he never had. But they'd shown him that their greatest inheritance was their character, not his success. That day on the plane, he told a close friend, "I was ready to use every ounce of corporate power to protect them." But they had already protected themselves with something more powerful, their dignity. 1 year after the incident that transformed the aviation industry, Olivia and Amara Johnson stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., addressing the National Transportation Conference. "A year ago today, we boarded a flight as ordinary passengers and found ourselves at the center of an extraordinary moment," Olivia began. What happened next revealed not just individual bias, but an opportunity for meaningful change. The twins, now 17 and preparing for college, MIT for Olivia, Stanford for Amara, had become respected voices in conversations about corporate accountability and consumer rights. Amara continued. "The changes we've witnessed across the aviation industry prove an important truth. Documentation creates accountability, and accountability drives improvement." The statistics supported their assessment. In the year following, Flight 783 passenger removal incidents decreased 72% across all major airlines. Bias-related complaints dropped 64%. Consumer confidence in airline fairness improved by 47%. The Johnson Protocol had been adopted by 23 airlines worldwide. Over 7,500 aviation employees had completed enhanced training. The #Dignity in-flight app had documented over 15,000 passenger experiences. The twins' personal journeys had evolved significantly as well. Olivia had received early acceptance to MIT's physics program with a concentration in aviation science. Her research on turbulence prediction had earned recognition from NASA, securing her internship position. "The incident changed how I approach physics," Olivia explained to a university interviewer. "I now see that scientific advancement is meaningless if it doesn't serve human dignity. My work focuses on making air travel not just safer, but more equitable." Amara's tech innovations had expanded beyond documentation tools. Her algorithms for detecting patterns of bias in customer service interactions had attracted attention from major corporations beyond aviation. Stanford's computer science program had recruited her specifically for their AI ethics initiative. "Technology can perpetuate bias or help eliminate it," Amara often said. "The difference lies in who designs it and for what purpose." Their father, Elijah Johnson, had expanded Johnson Aviation Technologies' influence beyond maintenance into corporate ethics consulting. The company now provided comprehensive audits of corporate culture alongside their technical services. "Safety isn't just about mechanical integrity," Elijah explained to industry partners. "It's about human integrity at every level of operation." Pinnacle Airlines, once the face of discrimination, had transformed into an industry leader in inclusive practices. CEO Victoria Patterson, who had initially been expected to resign over the scandal, was now being recognized for her comprehensive reform efforts. Sometimes leadership means acknowledging failure and committing fully to correction, Patterson told Aviation Weekly. The Johnson incident forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our culture. The Johnson Foundation for Aviation Equity had expanded its mission, now offering 200 annual scholarships to underrepresented students pursuing aviation careers. Its oversight committee, which included Judge Laura Hernandez and diversity consultant Thomas Wilson, ensured the foundation maintained its focus on structural change rather than symbolic gestures. Sophia Martinez, now a senior director at Pinnacle, had developed an industry-leading training program on verification before confrontation protocols. Her personal experience as a whistleblower had shaped her approach to encouraging ethical decision-making among frontline staff. "We don't just teach employees what to do," she explained. "We help them understand why it matters and how to find the courage to do what's right, even when it's difficult." Congress had passed the Aviation Equity and Accountability Act, establishing new standards for passenger treatment and transparent reporting of removal incidents. Technology played a central role in these improvements. Amara's expanded platform now included AI-powered analysis to identify patterns across reported incidents, helping airlines address potential problems before they escalated. Olivia's physics work had practical applications as well. Her turbulence prediction model, developed as part of her NASA internship, was being tested by major carriers to improve flight safety and comfort. Throughout all these professional accomplishments, the twins remained grounded by their family's values. As Elijah Johnson often reminded them, "Your greatest achievement isn't what you've accomplished, but how you've empowered others." The aviation incident had become a case study taught in business schools, law programs, and civil rights courses nationwide. But for the Johnson family, it remained a deeply personal lesson about dignity, documentation, and determination. At the conclusion of their conference address, Amara and Olivia shared the family motto that had guided their response 1 year earlier. "Dignity cannot be taken, only surrendered. And when you stand firm in your truth, you create space for lasting change." 2 years after Flight 783, 18-year-old Olivia Johnson stood at the podium as valedictorian of her graduating class. MIT-bound on a full scholarship, she addressed her classmates with the wisdom that comes from transformative experience. Life rarely announces its most important tests in advance. She began deliberately echoing the first words her father had spoken after the flight incident. These moments arrive disguised as everyday challenges, a disputed airline seat, a question about whether you belong, an assumption about your capabilities. In the audience, Amara watched proudly. Her sister had found her voice not just as a scientist, but as a leader. Meanwhile, Amara's technology startup Dignity Tech had secured $2.7 million in venture funding to expand her accountability platform beyond aviation into healthcare, education, and retail environments. Their father, Elijah Johnson, watched from the front row. Johnson Aviation Technologies had evolved beyond its original mission, now offering integrated services that combined technical excellence with ethical business practices. The incident that might have been simply a painful memory had instead become the foundation for meaningful progress. Olivia continued, "We are taught to prepare for scheduled tests, examinations, competitions, college applications, but life's most profound challenges arrive unannounced, testing not what we know, but who we are." In the 2 years since Flight 783, the twins had each processed the experience differently. For Olivia, it had crystallized her understanding of how scientific knowledge must serve human dignity. For Amara, it had demonstrated how technology could either amplify injustice or help correct it. They remained close despite choosing different universities. Their shared experience had strengthened their bond while clarifying their individual paths. When faced with injustice, Olivia told her classmates, "Remember that your response has power beyond the moment. Documentation creates accountability. Dignity preserves your humanity. And determination transforms personal challenges into collective progress." The speech resonated deeply with her peers, many of whom had witnessed the twins' transformation from quiet, academically focused students to confident young women with a clear sense of purpose. Across the aviation industry, the Johnson standards had become shorthand for verification before confrontation protocols now incorporated into international regulations. First-class seating disputes had dropped to near zero as verification. Before confrontation became standard practice worldwide. Pinnacle Airlines commemorated Dignity Day annually, turning the anniversary of their greatest failure into a commitment to ongoing improvement. Every employee, from CEO to baggage handler, participated in reflection and renewal of their passenger treatment promises. Former flight attendant Vanessa Rodriguez had found unexpected purpose after losing her aviation career. She now traveled to industry conferences, sharing her story as a cautionary tale. "I didn't see myself as biased," she would explain. "But bias doesn't require intention, only impact." Karen Walsh had taken a different path, working quietly with community organizations on racial reconciliation projects. Sometimes, she told a small church group, it takes losing everything to recognize what really matters. Sophia Martinez had risen to vice president of customer experience at Pinnacle, pioneering new approaches to inclusive service. Her team, deliberately diverse in age, race, and background, ensured that policies worked for all passengers, not just those who fit a certain profile. Judge Laura Hernandez, who had witnessed the original incident, now taught a law school course on documentation and civil rights. The Johnson effect, as she called it, demonstrated how strategic documentation could transform individual discrimination into structural progress. As Olivia concluded her valedictorian speech, she shared the lesson that had guided their response that fateful morning. When challenged, remember, your calm composure is more powerful than reactive anger. Your strategic documentation more effective than emotional arguments. And your determined persistence more transformative than momentary protest. The sustained applause wasn't just for an exceptional student. It was recognition of how two teenagers had turned a moment of bias into a movement for better treatment of all travelers. The impact reached far beyond statistics. The live stream had been viewed over 15 million times. The Johnson Protocol had been adopted by 127 companies across multiple industries. The Scholarship Foundation had supported 250 students pursuing aviation careers. And most importantly, thousands of passengers now traveled with greater dignity because two young women had refused to surrender theirs. As they celebrated afterward, Amara hugged her sister. "Remember when we were just two physics and tech nerds heading to visit Grandma Olivia?" laughed. "Now look at us changing the world from seats 2A and 2B. Their journey had come full circle from being questioned about whether they belonged in first class to helping create a world where everyone was treated with first-class dignity. If this story inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about dignity, courage, and transformation. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their voice matters and that documentation creates accountability. Remember, change begins when we refuse to surrender our dignity. Leave a comment below sharing your own experiences or how you plan to stand firm in your truth. Together we can create a world where everyone receives first-class respect.